Hello, everyone, and welcome to the League One Lowdown here on the Sports Debt Network. My name is Sam, and today we are doing our League One predictions. Finally, the new season is here, and I'm sure we're all very excited. First off, I'm joined by Jamie. Good evening, Jamie.
Hello, Sam. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. Callum as well. We are joined by Callum, who's hotspotted his way onto today's podcast.
Yeah, not too bad. I do have dedication to this podcast, but we should be all right. We should be able to get through this. But I'll make sure to pop up for the right teams to be able to annoy the right fans, and that'll be my role for this podcast.
So it'll be one person for that. Unfortunately, Seb is away with work, so he hasn't done a table prediction. So what we've done, we've got the owner of the Sports Debt Network, Ryan, who's a Lincoln City fan, to do his. So the way this will work, we've all done our own tables. We've added that up and divided it by 4, which gave us an average position, and that is where the teams have gone into the table. So starting in 24th place, probably no surprise to anyone listening, is League 2 playoff winners, Crawley Town. Jamie, was this a pretty obvious decision to make?
You took the words out of my mouth. I said we're sort of doing the prep for this and coming up with some notes and some ideas of trying to justify some of the positions. And for Crawley, I just put 24th, obviously, and that just seems as much as I can say. And it just seems inevitable, doesn't it? That it's like a car crash waiting to happen. It's like you're sort of watching it in slow motion. You know exactly what's going to happen, but you're seeing that car sort of fly towards a ditch or something. I don't know, but it's just a disaster waiting to happen. They've gutted the team in the summer. It's been a proper fire sale, and it's just going to go one way. There's absolutely no hope, I don't think. I mean, clip that, any Crawley fans, and use it at the end of the season if you sort of some great escape, but absolutely no chance of the staying up.
Is it kind of the same reasons for you, Callum, as well?
Yeah, I'm not all negative here. The only thing they do have going for them is that they could potentially have that underdog factor, and everyone puts out their under 18s expecting to beat Crawley, and then Crawley somehow surprise their way to, I don't know, the league win. Who knows? That's not going to happen in a million years, though, is it? So, yeah, Crawley, it's such a negative atmosphere, negative aura seems to be the word in trend at the moment.
Ooh.
So such a negative aura around the club, and I think that'll prove fatal in the end.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything against Scott Lindsay, because I think Scott Lindsay, as we all think, has done an excellent and an outstanding job last season to even get them into League One. Some of the signings they've made, if you go off transfer markets, value of players, Josh Flint being the standout, nearly €500,000 euros he's apparently worth. A lot of these players, I don't think any, in fact, have actually played at the level other than Junior Quiterna from Fleetwood, or maybe Jojo Wallacott as well from his time at Swindon. So they could upset it, but with the quality that is in League One this season, and like you say, Callum, the negative atmosphere around the club, I think it's back to League 2, Crawley Town go.
Yeah, I think you look at it, and it's such a shame because they did so well to get into the playoffs and then to win the playoffs last season, and they were looking a really good team by the end of the season. And it's a real shame that how quickly that's been turned around on its head, really. But I guess the only positive I can sort of come up with is that everybody's writing them off. So that could give you a bit of motivation, maybe sort of trying to prove people wrong. But it's going to take one hell of a job, isn't it? And yeah, 24th is for everyone apart from the optimist, Sam, sticking them in 23rd. So
one of us has got to put them not bottom. Yeah. So moving on to my team that were bottom, who are predicted to finish 23rd and to go down by all 4 of us, the goal-scoring machines that are Shrewsbury Town. We'll start with Callum this time. So you've predicted Shrewsbury 23rd, Callum.
Yeah, not so much as a hater as you, but again, it's just like there's no big thing coming out of them at the minute. We saw just how much they struggled for goals last year. We've seen people exit the club. Obviously, Lincoln, someone whose name completely eluded me right now. Bayliss, there we go. Bayliss is joining Lincoln as well. So just so many people leaving. Again, it's that everyone knows I'm more of a vibes and aura based person at the best of times, and sometimes you just have to go with the gut, don't you? And yeah, Shrewsbury just not giving me that positive attitude at the minute.
Callum Aura Davis. Should we call you from now on?
Please, my nickname. There we go.
That's going into the description of this podcast now. It's going to have Callum in speech.
Yeah, I mean, similar things for me. I mean, the only positive, I mean, and it's maybe 2 years too late for this to be a positive, but they've signed John Marquis this summer, and he's been sort of, he'll add a few goals, but not enough to keep them up, I don't think. I mean, I've got sort of fond memories of his time at Doncaster, barring the penalty shootout miss that sort of saw the end of his time there. But he's been around a bit, hasn't he? And adds a bit of experience. But, I mean, Callum mentioned Tom Bayliss moving on, and they've replaced him with Harrison Biggins, who's obviously another player who was at Doncaster, left in the summer. And for me, he's a sort of, I look at him and not being League One ready, or at least sort of not being at that level. And I think you can sort of look at a few people that they've brought in and sort of think maybe that they're not quite ready. And when you're looking at the people they've let go or have left, that their team is in a worse state than it was last year, and they only just sort of stayed in the league last time. So I think I'd be a bit worried if I was a Shrewsbury fan looking at the outgoings, and the incomings don't really stack up for me.
Yeah, I just know about.
We know about Crawley, but is it just a case of having two worse teams as to why they're 21st and not lower?
Yeah, I think I've sort of tried to be. I've taken a bit of maybe your other nickname is controversial, because I've tried to take a bit of yours and I've gone a bit out there for a couple. And yeah, I don't know why I put them 21st and not sort of 22nd, 23rd, because they all sort of fade into one, don't they? But they're going down in my prediction, and all of our predictions actually. So.
Yeah, I just don't see where they're actually going to score. So they scored the lowest scorers in the league last year. Their top scorer left in Udo to Wycombe, and they've replaced him with a geezer who got 2 goals for Cheltenham last year in George Lloyd, and then John Marquis, who can't really move anymore. So
he's not scored. He's sort of goal scoring is dried up as well, hasn't it? So
yeah. So moving on to 22nd place. So all three of us have put Mansfield Town in 22nd place, other than Ryan, who's not here to defend himself, put them in 16th.
What's that about, Ryan?
It looks like they're going to get Will Evans after we've made this prediction from Newport, which is a really good signing. So we'll start with Jamie. Why have we put Mansfield, or why have you put Mansfield to go down?
I mean, it's one of those things where I feel like they've been a bit of a casualty of the fact that it's a very strong league, because you sort of put the league table together and I'm getting to sort of the lower mid-table and going, well, these have improved and these have sort of slipped from last season, this and the other. And then I get down to Mansfield and it was like, well, I've sort of ran out of spots above the relegation zone, and I just don't see any real positivity about them. They obviously did very well last season in terms of getting the automatic promotion, but this summer I don't think there's been enough to make that squad ready to compete sort of for anything more than sort of a relegation fight this season. I know they brought Lee Gregory in, haven't they, from Chef Wednesday, but at 35 is the much he can offer in terms of sort of that mobility up front, but obviously he's a good player, a bit of experience, been around a bit, and Clough's a very good manager, so there's chance. I think Ryan's been very optimistic at 16th. I wouldn't be shocked if they stayed up, but by the skin of their teeth. But for me, I just see them going down, and it's sort of one of those where they just haven't improved enough, I feel.
No, I think that's completely fair.
I mean, they've got some. Yeah, got.
The only signing I think they've made of real quality is Keanu Bacchus from St Mirren. But like you say, Lee Gregory's now 35. Oshalaja didn't really have a good season with Burton. No. Fraser Blake Tracy isn't League One ready. If Mansfield are going to stay up, they have to pin all their hopes on Keeler Dunn staying. As a player I've admired for a couple of years, always wanted him at Orient for a couple of years, but it's never happened. So if anything good is to come out of Mansfield this season, it's going to come through him.
Yeah.
Again, there's just nothing. It's easy to say with all the teams in the bottom half before we get to about 15th, maybe 14th upwards. There's just you just don't get excited when you hear Mansfield. No one's excited to really go there for an away day, other than the fact that it might be another one of the 92. Do you know what I mean? That they've not been to. So that might be a bit mean on them, but yeah, we'll see. A very bad aura.
So moving on to the final relegation place. 21st is Cambridge United. Now, I've predicted them 19th. Jamie's been very kind and put them 14th. Callum has predicted them to go down in 21st, and then Ryan brought the average down with a 23rd place. So, Callum, we'll start with you. Why have you put Cambridge to go down?
I just think last year they were lucky that there were other teams worse than them. If that makes sense, I wasn't very. I don't want to say very impressed with them, but they were just. There were worse teams, if that makes sense, and a few ins, a few outs, like oh, but again, I just don't. It's so easy to go back to that word, like just the impression you get from the teams, but again, there's nothing really exciting, and we kind of see Cambridge. They never really push on from lower half of League One a lot of the times, and normally, they're a yo-yo team, aren't they, between the bottom two of the top four divisions? So, not just nothing too exciting about them, I don't think. But
yeah, I mean, I'm surprised. I'm sort of I feel like I'm a bit on an island, sitting 14th. I thought it seems, I think, a bigger gap than maybe it is. I mean, 14th to 19th is obviously a decent gap, but in terms of points, maybe come the end of the season, that might not be the biggest sort of difference. But yeah, lower mid-table for me, rather than sort of just scraping or even being relegated. I just think they've improved this summer, and I think he's got rid of Gary Monk. He's got rid of a lot of sort of the older, a bit more of the sort of the wily players, and has brought in a bit more youth and a bit more energy, as well as keeping a bit of experience. And I think he's just got that mix. It seems to me like that mix is sort of at least getting there. And it's a slow process for them of in the sort of the situation they were in. But I feel like they can sort of move forward a little bit. And yeah, I think maybe on reflection, it was a bit optimistic, 14th, but I don't see them being in a relegation scrap, because I think they've got enough to push them in the right direction. And I've got a feeling Gary Monk could sort of revitalise himself. I mean, if they finish 14th this season, Gary Monk could be walking into a top half League One job, a Championship job next season. He just needs sort of a good season to get his name back on the map, really. And I've got a feeling that this one could be it for him.
No, it's a good point what you make with Gary Monk, because obviously this job's quite big for him, because if he fails here, he probably won't get another job.
Yeah.
I quite like the signing of Corey Smith. I really like the signing of Kel Watts.
Kel Watts is a very good signing now.
The one signing I was surprised about was Ryan Loft from Port Vale, considering I've watched him multiple times and the geezer cannot move. How he is a professional footballer is beyond me. But they obviously see something in him. Maybe he'll work well with Shane Lavery. We don't know. But I think they'll just about survive, Cambridge United. But you could easily swap Cambridge for Mansfield, for argument's sake. So I think it's just...
I think Lavery could turn out to be a good signing. He's one of those where it's not exactly a given, but he's one of those where they've sort of put him in and they've given him a chance, which it could go well, it could go very wrong. But I sort of see Gary Monk as being able to sort of pull a good side together, and he's brought in obviously players he wants rather than sort of dealing with someone else's players. And that staying up last season, I think that's going to sort of give him a bit of momentum to push him on, and I think they'll be well clear of a relegation fight.
Okay, moving on to the team that we think would just finish outside the bottom four is Stevenage. So myself and Jamie have both predicted them to get relegated. Callum predicted them lower mid-table in 17th, and then Ryan brought the average up with Stevenage finishing in the top half. Otherwise, they would have been relegated with an average of about 21, I think it was. So again, we'll start with Callum again. Callum, Stevenage staying up.
I mean, we saw them on a bit of a downhill trend, didn't we, towards the end of last season with managed changing and whatnot and missing out on the playoffs. The one thing I kind of was hesitant to put them in the drop zone was just like how much can a team go? Like a team can't drop off surely that much. I don't think anyway, but they still know how to play football. I think that it's Stevenage. They know how to shithouse a few games, like we've been very, very aware of. They've kept a lot of the key players as well from last year. Not a huge amount of departures, but they've kept a lot of the core of that squad, I think. But to me, the main one is the manager. Still not very known. Obviously, taken over from Steve Evans, and less said about him. We'll get on to him eventually, but just anyway. But we'll wait and see. I think to me that they're an unknown because last year wasn't really Stevenage; it was Steve Evans as a team. So we'll learn a lot about what this group of players is actually capable of in the first half of the season. Then I think Stevenage are one of them where they could be, where they were last year, or they could be very, very shit. But Alex Revel, still a young manager by a lot of standards, only 41. So we'll have to wait and see.
And Jamie, you've predicted them to go down, same as me. I'm guessing we're going to have similar reasons for this.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of similar things to what Callum bring up in terms of Steve Evans being sort of the reason. I think they were a mid-table at best team last season that Steve Evans made into a playoff chasing team. And I think Alex Revel takes a lower mid-table team and makes them sort of a relegation threatened side. And I put them to go down. And I'm sort of pegging that really on Alex Revel. I don't have the faith in him as a manager. Obviously, not had the chance, has he? And managers deserve chances, and obviously this is a big chance for him. So he could obviously do a really good job, and they'll finish mid-table, maybe with Ryan thinks in 11th, or I don't think 17th would be a bad season. So that stay up after losing such a key figure like Steve Evans. But for me, I'm just not really sold on it, and I don't think he'll last the season personally. Everyone will be really out there. But yeah, for me, there's just not enough there for me to put them to stay up when I've got reasons for all the teams I've got sort of just above the drop zone. I've got reasons that I think they'll all stay up. Whereas for Stevenage, I couldn't find a reason that I think they're going to stay in the league.
No, they've just literally about 5 minutes ago announced the signing of Charlie Good, the ex-Brentford
Good
centre half.
signing that.
Good. That is literally your replacement for Van Kooten right there. But again, I think Alex Revel wants.
Got that joke. Please tell me you got that joke.
Just totally skipped it.
I've totally skipped it. I think you've got the complete change of style with Revel. Revel wants to change the style of football. A team that won 4, I think it was, of their last 16 games.
Yeah, they really dropped off, didn't they? Yeah.
Yeah, and to change a complete style of football with not a massive overhaul of players, I think is going to be incredibly difficult. Which is why I've predicted them to go down. So moving on to 19th place, Northampton Town. So we've actually all predicted them to stay up. Would this be down just to John Brady and his expertise as a manager?
I think it's just very similar to Stevenage in a way that they were good last year. We talk about second season syndrome a lot, really. I think that's, to me, that'll be the big one. So I put a bit of a drop. I've put 20th. I kind of don't really think that they're going to be much of a relegation battle, to be honest. I can see them being quite comfortable, a bit like, I forget who it was last year, that they were clear, and we all thought they were clear, and then they ended up only being like 1 point off the drop zone. I think it was Cambridge. I'm not sure off the top.
Might have been Cambridge,
where they were comfortable, but they were always an arm's length, and we never really linked them with the drop. But yeah, John Brady, a great manager, the third longest serving in the league, obviously behind Clough and Everett from Bolton. So, some interesting signings, I'm going to say. James Wilson doesn't particularly strike me as a forward who's going to score you many goals. So let's hope he's more of a backup for Northampton's sake. Tom Eaves, signed from Rotherham as well, very experienced though, so you can't rely on his pace. You'd imagine an awful lot. And And am I right in thinking that Liam Moore, who's joined from free agent, is he the bloke who used to play for Leicester? Is he a Premier League winner, or am I making that up?
Oh, that's a very good question because he was at Leicester.
He definitely was at whether he won the league with them. I can't completely remember, but I know he used to play for Leicester.
Yeah, because they released him, didn't they? And he was on trial at another League One club, I believe, this week. But I can't remember what the League One club was. He played in the pre-season.
He left. I've just got it here. He left for Reading in 2016, August 2016. I think he just missed out on it. If I can't remember. But anyway, that's beside the point. I think second season syndrome will play a role. A few decent signings, a few questionable signings. But that again. I mean, we talk about unknowns. There's a lot of unknowns, isn't there, at this point? That's why we do these predictions and get them all wrong. But what about you, Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, similar. I think they'll obviously do a little bit better. I'll put them in 18th as opposed to 20th. But I mean, like I said a little bit earlier, I mean, that's nothing, is it really? I do think they'll just fall off a little bit from last season, just being my main reason being Mark Leonard, obviously moving on, and he's gone to Birmingham after his loan last season. And I mean, he's fantastic. I mean, he's absolutely unbelievable, and he's probably too good for League One. And for Northampton, he was the cog in that team that pulled the whole thing together, and he was like pulling strings and sort of tying everything together. And I think without him, they do lose a lot, but I don't think they lose enough to put them in sort of relegation trouble. So yeah, I think a fall from last season, but not a big enough fall that there'll be any real concerns. But Sam, I mean, you put them a little bit lower than me, haven't you?
Yeah, I've put them in the same position as Callum in 20th. I just think there's going to be a cluster of about 6 or 7 teams at the bottom. I think the league's going to basically be split into 4 this year. You're going to have the top 4, then you're going to have 5th down to probably about 14th going for the playoffs, I would say. And then you've got the cluster of teams that I think will be fighting for survival. I think they'll stay up just purely. It's difficult to place them in there because when you're doing this, obviously you're probably doing it in alphabetical order. And it's like, I've only got 20th left, but I could see them finishing from 20th to 16th, for example. So I'll stick them there because they're staying up and it doesn't really matter where you put them as long as they stay up. But in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, no, I can go along with that.
So moving on to 18th place, Exeter City, a couple of places down from last year, but we've all roughly put them in that same sort of bracket in lower mid-table. Gary Caldwell obviously in charge, who we all thought would get sacked at some point last year. They've had I'd say a pretty understated transfer window. I think it's fair to say Josh McGuinness and Ryan Woods coming in, adding some experience to a youthful side. But have they? We obviously think they've added enough to beat the drop.
Yeah, I think it's one of those. I mean, I put them 19th, like 17th for you, Sam, 15th for Callum, and Ryan obviously just one above me in 18th. And that's basically all the same position, isn't it, really? You sort of look what you were saying, Sam, in terms of the league table being cut up. That is so similar, those positions. And for me, it is really just down to the league being stronger. I mean, I've got them dropping down a few places, not because they've got any worse, but just because everyone around them's got better and they've sort of stayed the same. So, I think they'll be fine. I'm not too worried about them getting into sort of relegation scrap. But they're one of those where they could be looking over their shoulder a little bit if things sort of take a turn early on. But yeah, I think they should be okay.
I feel like there's not a lot to say about Exeter. That again, they're just like
that's an evergreen statement, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fairly anonymous. I don't mean that like in a bad way. They know what they're doing. They got on with it, and I quite like them as a club. You know, I think fan owned and whatnot. Just you quite like them, don't you? So it's like they're one of them that I hope stay in the division. But again, I hope that Lincoln get 6 points off them effectively.
The one player I'm really excited to watch in League One is Ed Francis, who signed from Gateshead this season. One that caught my eye in non-league last year, so I'm quite excited to see how he gets on in League One. But yeah, I think their recruitment has been solid, but the league is so much stronger now that I think it's just going to be a little bit of a struggle for them, especially with, I think goal scoring will be an issue, which is why I've put them low. But I think they'll win the games that they need to win.
Yeah.
In 17th place, this one was a really tricky one to call. We've put averagely out is Reading in 17th place. I've put them 16th. Jamie, you put them in the top half in 10th. Callum 18th, and then Ryan's put them to go down. Now, I don't know if that's partly down to the knobhead that's still in charge at Reading, in terms of the owner, who still hasn't sold the football club. This is all, I think we're all in agreement, is all dependent if he sells the club, because they'll probably get a points deduction if he stays in charge. But Ruben Sellés is a very talented young coach, and in very difficult circumstances last year got the best out of some very exciting young players. Femi Aziz is still at the club, which is why I've put them as high as I have, because on his day he's one of the better players in League One. But we have to wait and see what happens with Reading's ownership, I think, with regards to them.
Yeah, that's what makes this one difficult, isn't it? Is that point deduction. I mean, I think my 10th to Ryan's 22nd is that the points deduction makes a huge difference for that, and that could see them really drop off, and you have to sell players, and then you're in a real trouble there. I've gone for the sort of feeling that they won't get a point deduction, but at least a hope, maybe more than sort of anything concrete. And I think if they don't get a point deduction, they have a real threat. I mean, for the reasons you said, Sam, and that they've got Femi Aziz, who's, I mean, unbelievably good, and that Ruben Sellés has been fantastic, barring when he got sent off against Lincoln. Callum will remember that. For a little aside, but he got sent off for kicking the ball. I think someone was coming over to take a throw in, and he sort of kicked the ball in the other direction, and he got sent off, and he wasn't best pleased about that. But yeah, I mean, he's a good coach. They've got a good team. They've kept together most of the team, really, haven't they? Even despite the point deductions and the sort of financial worries, they've kept a lot of it together. They're youthful and energetic, and yeah, I think it could be a very good season. But yeah, all dependent, like you say, on point deductions.
I mean, you look at their transfer activity. Obviously, so they've kept them together, and there's been 5 departures, and then there's this goal. The only arrival that they've got down is this goalkeeper, Jökull Andersson. This is according to Transfermarkt, anyway, who has then now gone back out on loan again. So that they've literally no one has come in at all, other than an Irish bloke, an Icelandic bloke, who's then disappeared again. So I don't know. It's one of them. You hope they survive, because I mean it's the story, isn't it? It's, you know, we're journalists effectively, and it's a nice story that this club with a dickish owner keeps facing adversity, and you know, it's great to write about. It's a great story for the players, for the fans, that, you know, eventually, you know, you kind of hope, obviously you hope for the best for your club, but then you hope that a club like Reading eventually do get a good owner and you see them back up. I mean, I remember them as a Premier League side. So again, it does depend on the owner, and it does depend if he gets his shit together, really.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Moving on to 16th place. Now, I found this one incredibly difficult, which is Burton Albion. So I put them 18th. Jamie, you've put them just to stay up. Ryan's put them 17th, and Callum's put them in the highest place of 11th. So we'll start with you, Callum. Top half finish.
I mean, it goes
great aura. Great aura. It
completely goes against my... What's it called? It goes against my whole fucking identity,
belief system,
Burton, doesn't it? I fucking hate them. Do you know what I mean? Last year I was slating them to shit. But no, I mean, the big thing for me, and we see it with Chelsea, and this is probably where I should have watched it, but we saw with Chelsea, they signed so many great players, and they were like they're shit now. Burton have kind of done that with, like, obviously every player that they've signed. I think it's over 20 now, isn't it? I don't know
it's
exactly
around 20,
how many.
yeah.
It's far too fucking many. So that's the one concern. That's where I'm going to put a massive asterisk on this prediction. But new owners, a new way of doing business, some great signings as well. I am excited. I don't want to say I'm excited by Burton Albion, because I don't think a sadder sentence has ever been said. But like, it would, like, I don't know. I'm getting this feeling that they could do all right. It's obviously Mark Robinson's first proper job, isn't it, in men's football, after being with Chelsea under under 21. So he's got to have been thought of high enough by Chelsea to poach him from Wimbledon, and then enough for Burton to nab him from Chelsea as well. So we'll wait and see. It's whether these players can gel. The main player for me that I'm still amazed is at this level is Charlie Webster. That's the Chelsea links in it, coming on a free transfer. But Charlie Webster, you see him all the time. He's one of them that on your football managers and whatnot always goes on to have a great career, at least in the Championship, if not Premier League. And that's obviously just a game in it. So we'll wait and see. I'm excited. I don't want to say it again, but excited by Burton Albion. There we go.
And Jamie, you've put them relatively the same to me in that sort of bracket of just about staying up.
Yeah, I think Callum has to do what like Dobby and Harry Potter. That's like bad Dobby, and it's like hit yourself. Now he said Burton are going to have a good. Like you're excited about Burton. Yeah, I mean for me, like you mentioned the big turnover, Callum. It was like they've been standing out down the high street, just handing out contracts to whoever walking past. Don't they?
I could have one. Where's mine?
Could you send them off? Yeah, have a contract. But it's just the big turnover was what worries me, and an inexperienced coach, which like Callum alluded to. And that is what I put in my notes, a recipe for possible disaster. I've not put them, obviously, in the relegation zone. I think they'll be just about okay. But, it could go very, very wrong. Or, as Callum has predicted, it could go very, very well. It's just one of those that's quite difficult to predict, and there's not really the evidence there. But for me, I don't see it going particularly well. But they're going to stay up, I think. It's
like Skabala, isn't it? Like Skabala was a manager at an under 21s level, and obviously we saw he got off to a rocky start, and then he got Lincoln nearly did. I'm not going to say the impossible, but nearly did something remarkable at the end of last season. So that's where I think that's where my optimism's coming from. But I can't say I'm optimistic about Burton Albion. Fucking hell. But yeah, that's where I'm going from. Sorry, Sam.
My main concern with Burton is obviously they've signed 20 odd players, but how many of them are actually League One quality? I'd say no more than 5 or 6 are guaranteed League One quality, which is my concern. Billy Bowden's obviously been around a very long time. Is Elliott good enough for League One? He had a really poor season last year in what was a difficult season for Salford. Harry Easted's a decent goalkeeper. Danilo Orsi is untested at League One. Obviously had a very prolific spell, but the only time he's been prolific in his career was under Scott Lindsay at Crawley. Terence Van Kooten, we know, is a solid League One centre-half. But other than that, it's Jason Srahara from Shrewsbury. Not sure. Jack Armour, definitely not League One quality. Ben Whitfield, I don't think is. Ruman Burrell, untested at this level, but comes with goals from Cove Rangers. So who knows with Burton, but I think it's going to take a little while for them to kick into gear, shall we say, with that big of an overhaul.
Yeah.
So we're getting into, so in my opinion, we're now in the position of the table where we're probably looking at this team could go for the playoffs, I think it's fair to say. Wycombe Wanderers I have put in 15th place. We've all put them 15th place, sorry. Relatively the same place. Jamie 17th, me 13th, Callum 14th, and then Ryan's predicted them just above the bottom 4. Obviously, they've got some new ownership with a very, very rich man, but he's not splashed the cash this far. He's very continued in the Wycombe way of reasonable transfers, shall we say, in terms of. So Wycombe, I think it's just going to be one of them seasons, isn't it? They've pretty much continuity, same manager, no real standout signings. It just looks like it's going to be a mid-table building season for Wycombe Wanderers.
Yeah, anywhere from 10th to 18th, sort of slot them in. That'll do, sort of thing. I have nothing to say about Wycombe at all. But yeah, I've gone lower mid-table, mainly just because they're just there, aren't they? Wycombe sort of in League One. They finished 10th last season, and the league has just got so much better, like I've sort of mentioned, that 10th has just been pushed down a few places, and that's sort of where I've landed with them. But yeah, I'm just nothing too much.
I'll keep it snappy again. They're just, I don't want to say anonymous again, but just fairly underwhelming season again. You know, we forget that they're in the Championship a couple of seasons ago. They're not really kicked on from, you know, obviously talk about the money from one season in the Championship giving them potential to build for a longer foundation, but I'm not getting that. I'm aware we've got a lot of teams to get through as well. The one thing I will say is, Ryan, please fucking explain 20th. Like, I know they're like not great, but they're not relegation candidates. Bloody hell, mate.
When I put this slide out on the Twitter page, I'll at him, and then we'll see.
When he's back, we should do a separate episode holding him to account, because bloody hell,
he's made you look like very conventional.
Normal.
Callum.
He's made me look normal. And it takes a weird bloke to do that.
So moving on to 14th place, another position Ryan's predicted lowest is 19th place. He's got for Bristol Rovers. I've got him in 14th, Jamie 13th, and Callum 16th. So again, us three are in the same sort of region for Bristol Rovers. So we'll start with Jamie.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone from 15th last season to 13th this season, in that the opposite way to Wycombe. I've got them sort of improved a little bit during the summer, and that they've sort of going to get their way up there. So yeah, that's really my thoughts. As Callum said, sort of keep it sharp and snappy, because I've got things to say about teams a bit higher up. But yeah, just a mid-table season, and that is sort of where Bristol Rovers are.
They're boring. Move on. 16th, I've gone for. We'll go with 14th as a group. They're very boring. They'll do a few things. Do you know what? The one thing I will say, I know he's an absolute knob, but if Joey Barton was their manager, at least we'd have something to say about the club. But he's not, so therefore I'm not interested in them anymore. So who have we put next?
Bristol Rovers. Like we've said on the tin, I think they'll just be there. Losing Anthony Evans. Promise on a chair's come in from Fleetwood, but he didn't really set the world alight. Isaac Hutchinson's
he does come with a bit of promise, though, doesn't he, though, Sam? Really,
just a tad. Yeah.
That's the second one of them. I'm not having it. Stop it.
So rounding out the bottom half is Stockport County. Now, I've raved about Stockport's transfer business this summer. I think it's fair to say. I think I've been really, really impressed by it. But a couple of injuries have happened in pre-season. There was a rumour, I don't know how true this is, that their new signing, Michael Mellon, the striker, is out for a very long time with an ACL injury. So his season's virtually over. Teo Adiramola, the fullback they got from Crystal Palace, is out for 3 months because Lewis Travis decided to assault him in a friendly, along with a couple of other injuries. So I would have put them higher, but they seem to have a reputation of getting injuries at difficult points in the season. But I really like Stockport, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're my wild card for a top 6 spot if I had to pick one.
Ooh.
Bloody hell,
but Callum, you've got them really low in 19th place.
Like we've been saying a lot, it's such a huge step up this year. Like, it's such a strong, with the exception of Crawley, it's such a strong league. And I like, obviously, we talk about some of their signings and whatnot. I mean, Sam Hughes is a good centre-back signing. I mean, with these ones, I look more at the defensive signings than who they've got up front, because when you're making this step up, it's all about who you've got at the back. So Sam Hughes is a good one, but like, I'm not. Do you know what I mean? I'm not seeing. I mean, Louis Barry's all right, isn't he? But. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's all right. I don't know.
I mean, the keeper they brought in from the lad at Crawley is obviously a good signing.
Yeah.
And Fiorini, I think, if he stays fit, will be a good signing. The one for me, in terms of the other way, the loss is Louis Barry, because they've not re-signed him, have they? Unless I've sort of missed that.
They got him on loan,
Yeah, they got him on loan. I think he only came through a few days ago.
I think I did my prediction before then, so I might knock them up a couple now. I know that. But yeah, I mean, mid-table, lower mid-table, they'll be okay. I don't see them getting pulled into any sort of relegation worries, and I don't see them being strong enough to get into the playoffs. So they sort of sit mid-table, which is a good season for like a promoted team to not be in any relegation trouble is a good season. And yeah, that's why I see them being. I don't see relegation being a concern.
So we'll quickly go to an ad break, and then we will show our top half finishes. Okay, welcome back. So, first team in the top half, Leyton Orient. I put them 9th, probably a bit optimistic, but they're my team, so I put them a little bit higher. Jamie's put us 16th. Callum and Ryan both 13th. With Orient, I think we've done okay business. There is more depth to the squad. Dan Ajay is back fit. Hallelujah. So he's our goal scorer. We've added more pace in Charlie Kelman, who knows what Richie Wellens wants. The exciting prospect of Sonny Perkins on loan. The back four's not changed too much. We've got a really good goalkeeper in Zach Hemming, who qualified for Europe with St Mirren last year. And I personally believe we've got a really good tactician in Richie Wellens. So I've put us a couple of places improvement from last year just because of our big players, Jordan Graham, Dan Ajay, being back fit for the new season.
I think it's just a case of second season syndrome from what I've guessing. It's not really even big second season syndrome. It's only 2 places worse, and I just purely think that's not because Leyton Orient are much worse, but the teams and whatnot. Like we say, it's just such a strong league this year. So I think that's all I'll say about Orient. Don't that as much as I'd like to hate them, just so I can hate them for the sake of this podcast. Yeah, it'd be nice for the character arc of this podcast. But there's again,
we're just kind of there, aren't we?
That you just and to be fair for Orient, considering where they were a few years ago, that's bliss.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think last season, like in hindsight, that was the big chance, wasn't it? I mean, you got so close to the playoffs and then sort of fell off towards the end. But that was a very big season, and you got so close, and which was a very good sort of performance overall. And yeah, I just see them slipping a little bit down into mid-table. I think Sonny Perkins could be sort of an under the radar and impress this season. I think sort of whenever I saw him at Leeds a couple of seasons ago, he looked capable. So I think he could turn out to be a very shrewd signing. But yeah, mid-table really for me, just lower mid-table rather than sort of anything more.
So moving on to 11th place. This is probably one of the biggest varieties we've got is Wigan Athletic. So I've got them 8th. Jamie's got them 6th. Callum's 12th and Ryan 15th. So Jamie, we'll start with you because you've got them to finish in 6th place.
Yeah, I mean, I know I said at the end of last season, I think when we did sort of our review, that they were going to be my dark horses if they had a good summer. And I think they've had a pretty decent summer. I wouldn't say they've sort of grabbed any headlines, but they've done sort of enough sort of solid business. And I think I really like Maloney, the manager. I think he's very. I hate saying people are underrated, but I think he's just sort of maybe just not talked about enough in terms of being a good League One manager, and he's done a good job with that Wigan team. And I think this is going to be a very good season for them, and they'll push their way up a little bit. And yeah, I've got them scraping into the playoffs. Which may come as a surprise, sort of who I put them in the playoffs ahead of. But I just see it being a good season. He did very well with a young team last season, and he's added a little bit more to that. And yeah, I just think this could really be a season for them. And it seems to me like stuff's aligning at the right time. And it could be Wigan's sort of they're my surprise package, my dark horses anyway.
I mean, I'm looking through what business they've done. They're bringing Calvin Ramsey is decent right back there. The one that's sticking out for me, and this might just be a complete. I don't know why he's here. They've got a 40-year-old goalkeeper, Andy Lonergan, who's signed from Everton. I'm having a quick look at him because, like, why the heck would you sign a 40-year-old?
He's been
goalkeeper?
Around years. He has.
I think my reasoning for that
for Liverpool. He used to play for Liverpool. He's one of the few players that's dared play for both Liverpool and Everton.
I mean, because they've got Sam Tickle, who's only 22, and how good he is. And then their other keeper is 19. I think he's there. Yeah, I think he's there as a not as explicit, but as like a player coach sort of thing to help Sam Tickle a little bit. That's where I see him being as. And yeah, I mean, on paper it looks a bit bonkers, doesn't it? But I mean,
is he a Wigan Athletic Scott Carton? Like that?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Yeah, I'll go with that. Yeah. Maybe just
Yeah.
about the 40 grand a week, whatever Scott Carson's on.
Yeah, they just missed out, didn't they? If you take away their points deduction last year, they had a pretty good season, and it's a very youthful approach they've taken this summer with some of the signings. Obviously, the big one is the centre half. Is it Charlie Hughes who looks like he will depart? But Will Aimson is a different type of centre half, but he's more than capable of coming in. And they've obviously got Toby Sibic as well from Hearts. Yeah. So it's different recruitment from Wigan, but and a young, exciting manager in Sean Maloney as well. So, yeah, ones to watch, I think, for this season.
I think it's important, just before we move on, in terms of what you said about the point deduction, that would got them quite close to the playoffs, wouldn't it? Or at least propelled them a little bit higher up the table. And I think, for me, they've improved from last season, and they're in a bit of better shape. So I just see them sort of moving on, and that point deduction, obviously not that hanging over their heads, is a real positive. And yeah, I mean, this is when they finish bottom half after all of this build-up. But I think they're in for a very good season.
So we got 10th place. We got Lincoln City. So I'll let you two take the reins of this one, because we're all pretty similar with this one, ranging from 12th to 8th.
Go on, Callum.
I think the way I see Lincoln's season is not to be optimistic. I've seen so many Lincoln City fans, because my timeline on Twitter is obviously dominated by Lincoln City fans giving their predictions at the minute, and all of them are putting, we'll just scrape in 6th, or we'll just get 5th, and I'm just like, I feel like you're really underestimating how strong this league is. And I look at Lincoln's signings this summer, and I'm like, there's been some good ones through the door. There's some ones with great signing. I think obviously Conor McGrandles for me is a great sign, really underrated as well. He really wasn't used as well as he should have been at Charlton. Like Michael Scapala says, a good experience signing coming in. There's some good people that have come into the club, but if Lincoln City fans think, and we saw at the end of the season, that incredible run of form that they had, it isn't. For a club with the resources that Lincoln City has, it's not sustainable. They won't ever be able to do that over a full season. The fact that they did it as long as they did blew my mind. Obviously, knowing the club and whatnot more than your average public bloke, but it was just like, I don't know. My aim is predict 9th, which is I think at least from what I've put is probably realistic, and then enjoy it, not expect. And that's what I think makes Lincoln not an outsider club, but the Lincoln fans don't expect that. They don't expect to be 6th. They've always expected just to have a good season and enjoy their football. So I think expect 9th, expect 10th or whatever, and then if they get 6th, enjoy it. And that's what I enjoy about the club. So we'll wait and see. I just don't think playoffs they're just slightly out of reach with the model that the club currently has with the amount of sales and whatnot. But I don't know. That might just be me being a pessimist, Jamie. But you've gone even lower than me. So
yeah, I mean, for all the same reasons, pretty much, I put them 12th rather than 9th. I feel like I agree with most of what you said. I'm not really going to add too much, but I think you can see the difference in like Ryan in 8th, you in 9th, so the Lincoln fans, and then I've gone 12th, Sam 11th. But for me, I think the only thing to add to that is obviously you mentioned sort of how bigger the losses have been. Obviously, Jensen going, they replaced seemingly quite well with Wickens. Obviously, he's a bit of an unknown, but by all accounts, he's a very highly rated goalkeeper, and he's going to do well. But Sorensen's that huge loss for me. But
they've not replaced him properly as well, I don't think.
But... Not really, have they? They brought in what's the lad who's
I think.
Dariqua, yeah. But
which he's looked good in pre-season, but it's not.
In terms of how good last Sorensen was, I think that's a difficult thing to replace, isn't it? And the only other thing to me I was going to add to what you said, Callum, was in terms of the goal scoring, because obviously there's no Joe Taylor, who was the top goal scorer for them last season and was only there half the season. Ben House is a great attacker, but not a goal scoring sort of. That's not his game, sort of to a T. Tyler Walker is the one in terms of the goals, and he's injured. And I don't see the goals coming from anywhere else. They can spread them around, yes, but there comes a point where you need a 15, 20 goal a season striker, and Lincoln don't have that because Tyler Walker can't stay fit. So that's why I see them struggling this season. And yeah, mid-table, I think I was going to put them lower than 12th, but sort of settled to not upsetting too many people and put them 12th instead. But yeah, I don't think they'll be flirting with the playoffs at all this season.
All
No,
I'll
I
say
personally-
is that the rumours that Joe Taylor is going to sign for the club based off the fact that they don't have a number 9 currently on their official shirt sponsors, that came out today. That Lincoln obviously released their player numbers for the year, and number 9 is vacant, which has all of a sudden kicked off every Lincoln City fan saying, "Come home, Joe Taylor." And
But it was last season, and they didn't sign him until January, so I don't think that means they're going to sign someone.
Exactly. I hate to say it, but don't get me wrong, I fucking love Joe Taylor back, even for half a season until Walker's fit. Say Walker comes back in January or whatever. I know he's meant to come back April now, but not April. Sorry, October.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We'll wait and see. But I imagine, Sam, you're very similar to Jamie.
Yeah. I just don't see at the moment where the goals are coming from. I like the signing of Tom Bayliss. I like the signing of Conor McGrandles, but I think Rob Street is a similar type of striker to Ben House in terms of he presses from the front, but I don't think he's a goal scorer. So that's why
McCartney's been great in pre-season, but we'll wait and see.
They've got 57 midfielders as well, which is sort of...
So moving into 9th place, Blackpool. So we're down 1 place on average from last season. We're all again roughly in sort of the same place. Yeah. They're a weird club, I think. They've had a weird summer. They signed Elkan Bagger earlier today. They've got Ashley Fletcher in, who comes in with pedigree, I suppose, but hasn't really hit the heights since his spell at Barnsley. Obviously played in the Premier League with West Ham. Been around at Watford, been around at Sheffield Wednesday, but I just don't think he's a very good striker. So I personally could have put Blackpool lower than 10th. But I think Neil Critchley's a decent coach. And I just think there's just going to be another nearly season for Blackpool.
Yeah, exactly the same. I've put them 8th, which is obviously where they finished last season. And I just, see it the same. They've not regressed, but they've not progressed. So I think it's going to be a very similar season to last year and missing out on the playoffs again, which, not the best, but they've not improved enough to sort of be knocking on the door for me.
Don't want to say that their reputation's going to carry them, but they're a top half League One club. I don't want to say they're a sleeping giant because they had 1 year in the Premier League, but it feels like they do have the resources to go a bit higher and be an established championship club. But that takes proper investment to even think about getting to that level, and I'm not 100% seeing that at the minute. So, like you said, a nearly maybe season we'll get to the point where we were in March last year, and we'll just be like, oh, we've not mentioned Blackpool much this year. Could they be in with a chance at the playoffs? And then they'll just be like, no. In short.
Cool. So moving on to 8th place is Barnsley. Again, a big variation on this one. I've got them 15th, Jamie 11th, and then yourself, Callum, and Ryan have them both in the playoff places. Are you expecting some further business that I don't know about from Barnsley?
I don't know.
Really?
Again, it's like I said with Blackpool. I don't want to say their reputation's going to carry them, but like to me, they've always been that kind of club. As we mentioned at the start of this podcast, the word aura. Now that counts for nothing, does it? Sometimes with results, but
expected aura per game or something like
that. Exactly that. I don't know. I kind of just expect them to be there or thereabouts to me. Like I say, Darryl Clark, great manager. We saw what he could do with extremely limited results at Cheltenham last year, nearly surviving what would have been the greatest of escapes, really. And I think, I don't think it'll take too long to get his teeth stuck in there. And I can see a Darryl Clark inspired push there. He's really gone up in my stocks there. So, yeah, I can see where your concerns are coming from for 15th and 11th. What would have been very interesting is to see where Seb would have put them. I think he's either too nervous or too worried about the season ahead to even think about making a positive prediction about them.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because I think Darryl Clark's a lovely bloke, but I don't think he's a top League One manager. Conor Hourihane and Mark Roberts both signing for the club, both aged 33, doesn't excite me at all. They basically just got their promotion squad back together. Matthew Craig is a very good signing. Obviously had a really good spell at, I believe, Doncaster last season. But I'm just not excited by them at all, to be honest. That's why I've put them so low, and losing Herbie Kane, Nicky Cadden, Devante Cole, Jordan Williams as well. They've just lost too many key players, I think.
Is that a negative aura?
Yes.
Same for me, really, with Sam. I mean, I put them 11th. I could have put them 15th. I could have put them 16th. You know what I mean? They're one of those where they I just don't see it being a good season. Herbie Kane, Devante Cole, and the goals he scored are two huge losses for me. And I don't think they've replaced that at all. I mean, Hourihane's coming, I guess, in midfield, hasn't he? Matthew Craig's a fantastic sign. I'm glad you brought that up, Sam, to be honest, because I saw him at Doncaster and he was superb. And he was like, well, if we went up, I think he'd have probably stayed. But obviously, he's too good for League Two at the minute. And I feel like this could be a really big season for him. So I'm really happy that he's got a move to League One, even if it's in a Barnsley team that I think are probably going to struggle. And yeah, my only other note really on them is I think it's just a rebuild season, a bit of a pause, a bit of a reset, and a bit of a go again. Sort of the cars broke down and they've had to take it into the garage, and Darryl Clark's sort of fixing it. It's going to take him all season. But I think by the end of the season, they could be in a good enough spot to then next season, not to look too far ahead, but then push on to the playoffs, because I just don't see it happening this straight away.
So the first team just missing out on the playoffs is Wrexham. So Ryan and Jamie have predicted them to finish 9th. Callum, you've got them to predict to finish 7th, and I have predicted them to finish inside of them playoff places. I just think some of the signings they actually made are League One quality. They're on a bit. I'm going to use Callum's phrase. There's an aura about that club in terms of positivity all around the club. While there are a lot of their key players are, like Paul Mullin, are unproven at League One level, the man's a goal scorer. And to get into them playoff places, you need a man that's going to get you 20 goals. And I think potentially Wrexham have 2 of them as well. You've got to remember they've got Jack Marriott as well. Yeah. Dan Scar's come in, Arthur Okonkwo. They've got 2 goalkeepers that would probably start for most League One clubs in their ranks. I think the competition for places is ripe. Phil Parkinson, he's a bit of a dinosaur manager, so to speak, is still a very good manager. He's probably League One level. Some teams probably, I can see why you've put Wrexham outside the playoffs, because teams will want to beat them for that Hollywoodness. But I think they will just about sneak into the playoffs.
I just don't think I could bring myself to put them in the playoffs, just from like a person, I think as like a lower league fan, you sort of look at the money they've got, and I think it is a bit of jealousy, if we're honest. But I think you just look at it and go, and you're just not happy, and you just want to beat them. And I remember we beat them 1-0 last season. It was like one of the best days of the season. Just sort of Paul Mullin tapped one in and got called offside. And it was like, what a day that was. But it's, for me, I mean, on a realistic note, I don't think they're quite good enough to get into the playoffs. I mean, they've had a League One team for 2 years. I mean, when they're in the season they got out of the National League, it was a League One worthy squad. But I think that squad, I don't think it's quite good enough to sort of hit the heights of the playoffs. But I think they'll be there or thereabouts, and 9th means they're probably going to be knocking on the door a little bit, at least getting towards the business end of the season. They'll be in with a shout, but I don't see them getting there in the end. But I mean, they've got a very good team, a very good manager, and I wouldn't be shocked if they got into the playoffs, but I think they'll just land outside for me.
I think almost like the magic is kind of wearing off. Like the story of Welcome to Wrexham has been written, and I can't remember what podcast it was. I think it was The Rest Is Football or something like that, where someone said that Ryan and Rob have brought another team over in Mexico. Obviously, that'll make another series on whatever it is, Disney Plus or whatever, God knows. But like the story's been written, and I think what Rob and Ryan will want to do now is get Wrexham to a stable League One level, maybe stable Championship level. I don't know. It depends what they want to do, but the best thing they can do, and what I hope for Wrexham's sake, is that they leave it as a club with the facilities to remain at that level, not just a team that has got there and we'll see back in the National League in 3 years' time.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point as well. We don't want another, what happened to them, was it 15 odd years ago, where they nearly went out of business. So hopefully they just leave the infrastructure and the club in a financially sound place. So moving into the final playoff position is Huddersfield Town, finishing 6th. So Jamie, you're the only one to predict Huddersfield to actually finish in the playoff places.
Yeah, I mean, I put them 5th. I really sort of put that down to the fact that they've kept a lot of the players from their squad from last season. And I think it must have been the last episode, Sam, where you saw that as a bit of a negative, that they kept so many of that relegation squad. But for me, I can sort of see it working out as a positive in the sort of way that there's a lot of Championship players in that team, Championship sort of worthy players that are dropping down into League One. And yeah, I do see them getting the playoffs quite comfortably. As I say, kept a lot of players, added Sorensen, added Herbie Kane, who were probably 2 of the best players in League One last season. So I just see it being a very good season for them. Not automatics. I sort of thought about it a little bit and then sort of put the rest of my table together, and they sort of kept dropping a place and they ended up in 5th. But yeah, playoffs for me. And I mean, I'm a little bit surprised I'm the only one that's put them in the playoffs. I mean, Callum's put them down at 8th. I mean, it's basically relegation's on that. But yeah, playoffs for me. So.
You shot me when you said the word Sorensen. So we're no longer friends, Jamie. That's still a very sore topic. Maybe it is a bit of Sorensen jealousy that I've put them 8th. I think obviously they made a few signings now, but it like you said, it's that, I want to say, that feeling of rot. I've got a friend currently who they've just been to work. They've just had a bad day at work, and they're just rotting, and they've had a bad season at work. So this season is just a rot, and get ready to properly go again next season. And I think maybe they need that rot. They need that year to just go, yeah, we were really shit 12 months ago. Let's actually not be shit, is effectively what I think.
Yeah, I think the 4 signings they've made, Anthony Evans, Sorensen, Kane and Miller, are very suited to a Michael Duff team. But I like you said, Jamie, I think their squad hasn't been overhauled enough to get rid of that losing mentality in the squad. But they could well get top 6. I mean, I've put them 7th, so it is possible. But I just think there's still that losing sort of culture, which may take a couple of match days to get rid of. So 5th place, I think, Jamie, you're the only one to actually put them. Well, Ryan's put them to get automatic promotion in 2nd. Me and Callum have them in the playoffs in 5th and 6th, and then Jamie, you've told them Peterborough to miss out on the playoffs.
Yeah, this was a difficult one for me because it was them and Wigan that I was sort of really thinking between who I wanted to put 6th, who I wanted to put 7th. I mean, obviously, I put Wigan 6th and Peterborough 7th in the end. Really, because sort of who Peterborough have lost. I mean, I know Johnson Clark-Harris wasn't a main feature last season, but I do think he's that extra dynamic, that different option he brings will be a loss. Obviously, Mason Clark, that deal that was already agreed, he's gone to Coventry, and they've lost obviously in the defence. I mean, Harrison Burrows has gone, hasn't he? And Ronnie Edwards has moved over to Germany. I mean, they've lost a lot in that defence and in the attack, and there's just holes in that team for me. And obviously, they brought in what are to me unknowns, and you just trust them, don't you? I feel like they could sign sort of Joe Bloggs, and because of their transfer record and how good they've been over past seasons of signing very, very good players and building them into better players, that you just sort of go, yeah, he'll be fantastic. And I feel like that's why I've still put them as high as I did. But for me, just not enough and to get into the playoffs. I think those losses are just probably 1 or 2 too many for one summer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm trusting. The reason I put in the playoffs is I'm trusting Darren Ferguson. I'm trusting them to get another striker. I think it'd be a different story if they lost another one. And like if they Hector Kyprianou has obviously been rumoured to be leaving for a number of months now. So if they lost him as well, then I can fully validate taking them out of the playoffs and maybe putting Huddersfield in. But I just think it's the Darren Ferguson effect, and I trust their sort of recruitment team to get the striker to replace Clark Harris. I think that's all their squad's really missing now. They've obviously got two centre-halves, which look like that will replace Knight and Edwards. I think they just lack another striker.
I think you can almost pencil them in as playoffs for every single season, and then sometimes they'll win it. Is kind of where I think Peterborough sit. They're almost like that. Like we say with a lot of teams, like we've mentioned with Blackpool, they're there. Like Wycombe, they're there. This is their spot within the league, and that's kind of what we come to expect from them, really, I think.
Yeah, so moving on to fourth place is Bolton Wanderers. So I've got them second, Jamie third, Callum fourth, Ryan fifth. So it's an accumulation of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let you two take the reins on this one because I've got them automatically promoted, and I'll give you my reasons why after. But we'll start with Callum. You got them the lowest of us three in fourth.
I have them down as fourth, but I did put them. I think I'm the only one that's done this actually because I'm a weirdo. I had them down as playoff winners.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
I don't know why. I just feel like this is the season where we've all just. I kind of get the impression that we're all just a bit. I mean, obviously not you, Sam, but I'm just a bit like, well, they've had their big chance last year. So my kind of vibes is that they'll just have a bit of an average campaign by their standards, but then switch it on when it actually matters. I think, if that makes sense, at the end, almost in the way that Oxford did last year. They had a meh campaign. Obviously, Bolton finished a bit higher than Oxford did, I think, but have a meh campaign and then switch it on in the final month or two when it actually really matters.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they got so close last season, losing in the playoff final. I mean, the season before, was it the playoff semi-finals?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, natural progression means that they're going to win the playoffs, doesn't it? But I think for me, I just don't think they've got enough to get automatics. They're just like the nearly men of like recent years, like always the bridesmaids, never the bride sort of thing. And for me, I just think they'll just be outside the automatics. I don't think they will win the playoffs. I've got someone else for that we'll get to. But I feel like it might be the last season Ian Evatt does. If they finish third, I don't know if they're going to put him through another season of getting so close and not quite doing it. But they've kept the core together, which I guess is the good thing. And they've got a very good team. I mean, I've put them third. I mean, it has to be a good team to finish third, doesn't it? But I just don't think they've got enough to finish in the automatics. And I think those sort of worries and concerns of the last few seasons in the playoffs will come back to get them again. Like the old ghosts coming back to haunt them in the playoffs once more.
I think the biggest complaint I had for Bolton last year was they didn't get enough goals from midfield. And I think they've rectified that with Kaledi Lolos. They've obviously got Scott Arfield, an very, very, very experienced midfielder. They got Chris Farino, who I think is a better replacement for Ricardo Santos. And they've got this Hungarian left winger from Fehervara in Hungary. If you go
Ferencváros.
Them ones.
When I can't pronounce names, I go stuff like that lad from Wigan, and Callum can fill it in for me.
Well, it's just because he's there was this YouTube save from a while ago where this bloke took that team and tried to get Hungary to be the best team in the entire best country in the entire world. So that's one of them that I weirdly know how to pronounce.
But he's come up with a market value of nearly $1 million euros. So there's got to be something about him. And they've obviously, we know the firepower Bolton have up front: Victor Di-Bourgeau, Aaron Collins, Dion Charles. I think they'll probably be the league's top scorers come the end of the season. So third place, Rotherham United. They are my playoff winners, we've all got them in the playoffs other than Jamie, who's got them to go up automatically.
And Callum will love this. I mean, Steve Evans is such a good manager, isn't he, Callum? That I just can't see anything other than automatic promotion. I mean, no, on a serious note, they've sort of the overhaul that squad has got this summer. That Steve Evans has taken a team that was broken and sort of crushed after the finishing so resoundly bottom last season. And he's taken that team and just turned them around to be one of the most exciting in the division. And he's brought so that he's got the band back together, hasn't he? In a way, sort of like Raggett, Rafferty, Clark Harris. I mean, that's just naming a few. Rhys James, who was at Chef Wednesday, he's brought in a lot of very good players. Got his business done very early, and he's added to it consistently. And I think Steve Evans as a manager, as much as it pains Callum to hear it, he is quality at this level. And I think just adding all those ingredients together makes for just a promotion pie. There you are.
And I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, obviously, it's a good squad. Steve Evans, a good manager. What I will say, and this is what I really, really hope happens, right? Do you know what? I want them to get to the playoff final. I do, and I have to. I have to admit, I think it'll be a Rotherham Bolton playoff final, right? But I really want it to get to the goalkeepers taking the penalty. And everyone's just like, oh, it's so unfortunate. And then I'll just be sat at the back of the pub pissing myself laughing because they've lost on penalties in the playoff final. And that'll make me happy. So that's why I've gone third, because then at most I can only be, 2 off, really. They're not going to finish lower than 6th. You wouldn't think. So I'll only be 2 off if they win the whole bloody thing. And let's hope they don't. And the other thing I will say on a more serious note is we saw what Steve Evans did with a Stevenage side that shouldn't be there. It's a different manager to take a team from lower mid-table to upper mid-table than it is to take a side from top half to winning the league or to get promotion. Whether Steve Evans is shithouse tactics, the right tactics. I don't want to say the right tactics. There's no right or wrong way to win a league, but whether they're the type of tactics that will win you the league, I don't know.
No, I think that's all valid. I don't really have anything to add. It's obviously the average age of their signings is over 27 years old, so I think that tells you what Steve Evans wants from his side. He wants an experienced team who has the know-how, if that makes sense. So. But yeah, I don't really have anything to add other than what you two have said. So moving on to the automatic promotion places. The first one, Charlton Athletic. So Callum, you're the only person to actually predict them to get automatically promoted. Because of the average that me and Ryan have in 3rd and Jamie 4th, they have come out in 2nd place, which is a rise of 14 positions if this was to happen from last year. Is it all down to the man they now have in charge?
Yeah, I think it just does. I think, we saw at the end of last season, I don't think their form was too great, but it was strong. I can't remember what it was. I seem to remember there was a lot of draws, but Nathan Jones his record speaks for itself. Really, he's a very experienced manager. Don't get me wrong. Has spells at Luton, Stoke, Southampton as well. And you have to remember he was under 21s manager actually at Charlton as well, so it's technically a return to the Valley. I think he's a good manager, and I think it's kind of one of them that it'll just happen. I can't see it being a runaway 2nd place, but a bit like Derby last year, where no matter what Derby did, they always seemed to just stay 2nd. So I can kind of see that happening with Charlton this year. So,
you've all jumped on the bandwagon, and then I put them the lowest. I think I was like banging the Nathan Jones drum from day one, and how optimistic I was sort of the back end of last season. And then I said without all the issues, point deductions and such, that they're not the point deductions, just they just sort of get mixed in with the point deduction issue, like Wigan, Reading, and they were in that sort of category. But just without the issues that they had last season, with Nathan Jones in charge, I just see this being a great season, and I think they're going to win the playoffs. They're my playoff winners. But I did put them in fourth, sort of below Bolton. But yeah, I mean, for me, yeah, Nathan Jones, sort of Callum hit the nail on the head there. He's sort of the ingredient that pushes this team so far up the table. And even without Alfie May, I mean, it's a trust the process thing, I think, with that. That you look at it on paper and that's such a huge loss. I mean, you're losing probably the best striker in the league in terms of at least goal scoring. And to sort of fit that system a little bit better than what Nathan Jones wants to do. So yeah, for me, playoffs and playoff win. But yeah, fourth. So I'm surprised I'm the low man on Charlton and Nathan Jones. But yeah, I've got them going up. So swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, I think replacing Alfie May with Matt Godden and Ghassan Hadmay is pretty sensible business as well. You've got a target man that's really good at pressing, and Matty Godden, who very experienced championship striker and knows where the back of the net is. So good recruitment from Charlton. Yeah. So I think the most unsurprising thing, other than probably Crawley Town, is who we've got to win the league. Birmingham City. There's a full house. Everyone expects them to win the league. I mean, it would be quite funny if they didn't win the league, and it'd probably be a failure if they didn't win the league. The amount of money, and we can all say we are jealous of the amount of money they have available to them. We'd all love our club to go and spend 10, 15 million quid. But if they don't go up, obviously they can't do that for the next season because of the new financial rules that come into League One. But we think it could even be a record points haul in League One with the amount of quality they've actually got in their squad, especially if they keep hold of people like Jordan James and Siriki Dembele who have interest in them, but you keep hold of them, you're going to destroy near enough most League One teams.
The only caveat I've got is their manager. I mean, I've put them first, so I think it won't be too much of an issue. But Chris Davis, I think, is if everything's correct lined up, this is his first manager role. He's always been assistant manager, mainly that of Brendan Rodgers, a little bit for Jurgen Klopp. I think 12 games for Klopp, but mainly Brendan. And then for the last season, he was assistant manager at Tottenham under Postecoglou. So, yeah, I don't get me wrong. They must be doing something right. He must be doing something right or must be saying something right, at least to attract the quality of players in that they are. But yeah, I mean, they've got to be first. If they don't finish first, even if they finish second and get promoted, it'll be a failure really with how much money they've spent. I mean, you worry for the club, don't you? If they don't go up this year, you really bloody worry for them.
Yeah. I think I can sort of sit here all day and list all their transfers and tell you why that is going to put them up, and I mean, and put them in the top of the table. I think everybody knows, and I've seen very, very few people not predict them to finish first, and there's obviously a reason for that. I mean, their recruitment's been fantastic, but they've been bankrolled, haven't they? Obviously, sort of it takes a lot of funding to put together such a big and such an exciting squad. But yeah, it has to go well. If they don't go up, then it could really be sort of awful consequences if they don't go up. But yeah, I don't see a world where they don't go up, and I don't really see a world where they don't finish top. I mean, it's just maybe the most anticlimactic end we could have had. But yeah, they're going to win the league.
Yeah, so if you're watching on YouTube, you can read our 1 to 24 here. So to run through the people not watching on YouTube, we've got going from 1st to 24th, we've got Birmingham and Charlton automatically promoted. Rotherham, Bolton, Peterborough and Huddersfield in the playoff places, with Wrexham, Barnsley, Blackpool, Lincoln, Wigan and Leyton Orient rounding out the top half, with Stockport, Bristol Rovers, Wycombe, Burton, Reading, Exeter, Northampton and Stevenage going from 13th to 20th. And the 4 to go down are Cambridge United, Mansfield Town, Shrewsbury Town and Crawley Town. Let us know what you think of these predictions at League One Lowdown on Twitter. It's the number 1, so League number 1 Lowdown. Give us a follow, give us a rating on your preferred platform. Get involved in the comment section if you're watching on YouTube, and bring on match day 1.